I saw something last night that I cannot forget no matter how hard I try. It was not on television. It was not in a dream. It was right there in my own home. My daughter Claire, the same little girl I once held in my arms, the same child I worked my fingers to the bone for, was sitting in my study with her husband, Daniel. They thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. And through a cracked door, I saw them rifling through my private papers like strangers breaking into a bank. If you're listening to me now, I want you to tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I read them all, every city, every town. And don't forget to subscribe because the story I'm about to tell you will show you just how deep betrayal can cut. Now let me take you back to how it all began. My name is Eleanor Pierce. I am 68 years old. For most of my life I was a school teacher. I taught history to teenagers who often couldn't care less, but I loved it anyway. Teaching was my calling. And when my husband Richard was alive, my life felt full even in its struggles. Richard was a quiet man, a carpenter by trade. He built furniture that still sits in this house. Our dining table, our bookshelves, even the little bench in the entryway where Claire used to sit to lace up her school shoes. He passed 6 years ago. Heart failure. One December morning he kissed me goodbye before heading to the workshop, and by the afternoon he was gone. That's when the house changed. The silence was heavy. The walls echoed with absence. But still this home was mine. Every nail, every board, every memory. Claire was my only child. Raising her wasn't easy. After Richard died, I had to stretch every dollar from my pension and his small life insurance policy. I skipped vacations, sold the second car, and worked part-time even after retirement just to help her through college. When she married Daniel, I thought my sacrifice had been worth it. He seemed polite, dependable. He called me Mrs. Pierce at first, until I insisted on Eleanor. So when they told me they wanted to move in to help, I believed them. My knees had been aching and the stairs felt steeper every year. The idea of companionship sounded comforting. First it was. Claire's laughter filled the kitchen again. Daniel carried heavy grocery bags without me asking. For a little while I thought maybe my loneliness had ended. But then the little things started. Claire telling me I was repeating stories. Daniel gently taking the bills from my hands, saying, "Don't worry, Eleanor, I'll take care of this." Whispers in the hallway that stopped when I walked in. I brushed it off. Told myself I was imagining it. Told myself they were just being considerate. Until last night. It was after midnight. Rain tapped against the windows and the house was quiet. I woke up thirsty, so I slipped out of bed, pulled on my robe, and padded softly down the hallway toward the kitchen. That's when I noticed it. A sliver of light glowing from under the study door. I stopped. My study is my sanctuary. It's where I keep my books, my journals, and most importantly, my private files. Richard's insurance policy, the deed to the house, my savings account statements. At first, I thought Daniel had left his laptop on. He sometimes worked late into the night. But as I drew closer, I heard voices. Oh, urgent. The door was cracked open. I leaned closer, careful not to make a sound. And there she was. Claire, my daughter. Sitting at the desk, papers spread all over the table. Her face pale in the lamplight. Daniel stood behind her, holding one of my folders. My folder. The one I always kept locked in the bottom drawer of my desk. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. My breath caught in my throat. Daniel's voice was sharp. Here, look at this. $500,000. The house is worth every bit. Claire took the paper from him, biting her lip. And the insurance? Daniel shuffled through another stack. Found it. Life insurance. Savings account. Everything's here. Once we file, it's all under our control. Control. That word slammed into me like a fist. Claire's voice trembled. But what if she notices? You know how careful Mom is. Daniel laughed under his breath. She's old, Claire. Half the time she can't remember where she left her keys. A judge won't think twice. We'll call it guardianship. Say we're protecting her. Once it's signed, it's ours. Guardianship. I gripped the wall to steady myself. Guardianship meant they wanted the court to declare me incapable of managing my own life. Guardianship meant losing not just my home but my independence, my freedom, everything. Claire whispered, "She's still my mother, Daniel." For a moment I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe my daughter would stop this madness. Maybe she still loved me enough to resist. But Daniel leaned close to her, his voice cold. "Your mother had her chance. She's had control long enough. Now it's our turn." Claire lowered her head and said nothing. That silence hurt worse than any words. I wanted to burst into that room, to shout, to snatch my papers back and throw them out into the rain. But I didn't. Something stronger than rage kept me still. I slipped back down the hallway, each step heavier than the last, and closed my bedroom door behind me. Is that I broke. My hands shook as I sank onto the bed. Tears stung my eyes as I thought of everything I'd done for Claire. The late nights sewing her Halloween costumes. The years I drove an old car so she could have piano lessons. The way I stayed awake until I heard her key turn in the door during her teenage years. No, she was planning to take it all. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours maybe. But by the time dawn crept through the blinds, my tears were gone. Something else had taken their place. Resolve. I realized then I couldn't confront them. Not yet. If I showed them my cards too soon, they'd only hide the evidence. No, I had to be smarter. I had to watch. Wait. And when the time came, I had to strike. Because what I saw in that study wasn't just betrayal. It was war. And they had no idea that the woman they thought was weak was already preparing for the reckoning. The morning after I saw Claire and Daniel in my study, I put on the best act of my life. I walked into the kitchen humming softly, like nothing in the world was wrong. Claire was already there, flipping pancakes on the stove. "Morning, Mom," she said brightly, too brightly. Daniel sat at the table with the newspaper, his reading glasses sliding down his nose. He looked up and smiled, casual, practiced. I smiled back. "Smells good, sweetheart." I pulled out a chair, careful not to let my trembling hands show. Inside, my stomach was in knots, because I knew what they were hiding. And I knew I couldn't let them see what I had discovered. First, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd act normal. Pretend everything was fine. But once you've seen behind the mask, you can't unsee it. Daniel began taking over small tasks that had always been mine. "Don't worry about the bills, Eleanor," he'd say, sliding the envelope out of my hand before I could protest. "You've done enough paperwork for a lifetime." Claire started hovering. If I misplaced my glasses, she'd shake her head gently, like a nurse with a patient. "Mom, you really should let us take more responsibility. You've been forgetting things lately." Forgetting things. That phrase stung every time. Yes, sometimes I misplaced small items. Who doesn't? But now, every slip was being catalogued, filed away, ready to be used against me. They were building a case. Against me. One afternoon I heard them again. I was in the hallway dusting the bookshelf when I caught voices drifting from the living room. Daniel's tone was low, urgent. "We need to move faster. Guardianship isn't complicated if we make it clear she's slipping." Claire's voice was softer, hesitant. "But what if she pushes back? He's always been sharp, Daniel. What if the judge sees it?" Daniel let out a cold laugh. "Judges don't care, Claire. All they need is a doctor's note and a few stories of confusion. Once the papers are filed, we control everything, savings, insurance, the house. She can't fight it." Claire didn't answer right away. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding. Finally, she whispered, "She's still my mom." Daniel's reply cut through me like a blade. "And she's old. She's had her life. Now it's our turn." Silence. Then I heard papers shuffling again. I stumbled back into my room before they could catch me listening. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching my robe around me, shaking like a leaf in a storm. Guardianship. It wasn't just about money. It was about control. About stripping me of the right to decide where I lived, what doctor I saw, even what food I ate. They wouldn't just take my house. They would take my life. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain tapping against the window, replaying every moment of Claire's childhood in my head. The little girl with freckles on her nose who used to climb into bed with me during thunderstorms. The teenager who rolled her eyes but still let me braid her hair before school dances. The college graduate I clapped for with tears streaming down my face. How had she become this? And Daniel, what had he whispered into her ear to turn her against me? I wanted to march into their bedroom and demand answers. I wanted to scream. But then I remembered the look on Daniel's face, the way he spoke so confidently, like it was already decided. And Claire's silence. Her silence was worse than any words. No, I couldn't confront them yet. If I did, they would hide the evidence, twist the story, maybe even make their move faster. I had to be patient. I had to be smart. So I played along. The next morning, I let Daniel take the checkbook from me. I smiled as if relieved. "Oh dear, I always get these numbers mixed up." He smiled back, but his His eyes glimmered with something greedy, something triumphant. Claire began setting my pills out for me in the mornings. Just to help you remember, Mom, she said sweetly. I took them with a smile. Inside, my anger burned hotter. They thought they were tricking me. But every forgetful moment, every patronizing gesture was evidence. Evidence of how they were building their case. And if they were documenting me, I could document them too. I started keeping a notebook. A simple spiral-bound notebook tucked under the mattress. Every whisper I overheard, every cruel glance Daniel shot when he thought I wasn't looking, every word Claire used to suggest I was slipping. I wrote it all down. Dates, times, details. I became a historian of my own betrayal. And the more I wrote, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't about love. It wasn't even about care. It was about greed. The whispers grew louder over the weeks. One evening, I stood in the doorway unnoticed as Daniel told Claire, "Once the guardianship is in place, we can refinance. Maybe even sell this old house. Start fresh somewhere better." Claire didn't look at me, but I swear she felt my presence. Her shoulders tensed, her eyes flickered toward the door. For a moment, I thought she might speak up, say something to stop him. But she didn't. She never did. Instead, she folded the papers neatly and said, "I'll make the appointment with Dr. Adler tomorrow. He's known Mom for years. He'll believe me." Dr. Adler. My doctor. The man who had treated my arthritis and blood pressure for a decade. My stomach churned. If they convinced him I was losing my memory, the court would believe it. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. But this time I wasn't just angry. I was determined. If they wanted to take me down through lies, I would need the truth. Hard proof. I didn't know how yet. But I knew one thing. I couldn't fight this alone. The next morning, Daniel found me at the dining table, staring at the crossword puzzle. "Stuck again, Eleanor?" he asked, smirking. I circled a word carefully and smiled up at him. "Oh, just a bit of confusion, dear. You know how I am these days." His smirk widened. He thought he was winning. And that's when I knew. The best way to beat them was to let them think they were ahead. I kept playing the part, forgetting small things on purpose, letting them believe I was slipping. But all the while I was watching, listening, writing. Because if they wanted a war, I was going to give them one. And they had no idea the storm I was preparing. The deeper I sank into their act, the clearer their game became. Claire and Daniel weren't in a hurry. They were patient hunters, circling, waiting for the right moment to strike. And I, their prey, was supposed to play dumb. Little did they know I was sharpening my claws in the shadows. It began with the doctor's appointment. One morning, Claire sat across from me at breakfast, her face careful, like she was rehearsing a line in a play. "Mom," she said, "Dr. Adler thinks it's time for a checkup. Just routine. Blood pressure, memory test, that sort of thing." She stirred her coffee slowly, avoiding my eyes. Daniel jumped in before I could answer. "We'll go with you. Make sure everything's covered." I forced a smile, though my hands tightened around my mug. "Routine checkup?" Well, this was the first step of their plan. But I nodded. "Of course. It's been a while." Inside I was boiling. Dr. Adler had been my physician for over 10 years. He knew me as well as any doctor could. He'd seen me through arthritis flares, through Richard's passing, through the ups and downs of aging. As I sat in his office, Claire by my side like a shadow, I watched her feed him little seeds of doubt. "She's been forgetting things, doctor," Claire said gently with that false concern. "Misplacing bills. Mixing up dates." I sat straight in the chair, my voice firm. "Everyone misplaces things, Claire. Don't you?" Dr. Adler glanced at me, then back at her. "Well," he said slowly, "it's not uncommon at this age." Claire pressed her advantage. "She also gets suspicious. She thought someone took her insurance papers. They were just in another drawer." Why? I had seen her and Daniel with those papers in their hands. I swallowed my anger. If I lashed out, it would only prove her point. So I smiled sweetly. "I suppose we all get suspicious sometimes. Even you, doctor, when you lose your pen." Dr. Adler chuckled, but I saw the note he scribbled in my file. They were building their case. One brick at a time. The next phase was psychological pressure. Daniel began commenting on my moods. "You've been short-tempered lately, Eleanor. Are you sure you're okay?" Claire would sigh and pat my hand. "Mom, maybe you should rest more. You've been different. Forgetful. Suspicious." They said it often enough, I almost started to wonder if it was true. That's the cruelest thing about gaslighting. It makes you question your own mind. But I had something they didn't know. My notebook. Every night I wrote it all down. Their words, their lies, their manipulation. When you see it in black and white, the truth steadies you. And the truth was clear. I was not losing my mind. I was losing my family. Then came the papers. One evening, Daniel carried a neat stack of documents into the dining room. He set them on the table as if they were nothing more than utility bills. "Eleanor," he said warmly, "we've been talking to a lawyer friend. Just small things. Updating your will, making sure medical decisions are covered. It's all for your protection." My heart pounded. This was it. Claire slid the papers toward me. "It's standard, Mom. You just need to sign a few places. That way, if something ever happens, we can take care of everything smoothly." I picked up the top sheet, scanning the lines. Legal words blurred together, but I saw enough. Power of attorney. Transfer of rights. My pen hovered in the air. I looked up at Claire. She smiled sweetly, the same smile she used to give me when she wanted more allowance. Only now it was laced with greed. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low. "It's just paperwork, Eleanor. Nothing complicated." I set the pen down. "I'd like to read it first." "Foley. You know I'm not quick with legalese." A flicker of irritation crossed Daniel's face. Claire covered it with another smile. "Of course, Mom. Take your time." But I knew the truth. They didn't want me to understand. They wanted my signature, nothing more. That night, I hid the papers in my bedroom. I copied down phrases into my notebook. Enough to know this wasn't just routine. This was the key to everything they wanted. My house, my money, my freedom. I sat awake until dawn, staring at those documents. And that's when I realized, this was bigger than me. If I didn't fight back, I wouldn't just lose my home. I would lose my voice, my dignity, my very self. So I made a decision. I needed allies. The next afternoon, while Claire and Daniel were out shopping, I called Dr. Adler's office. When the nurse answered, I asked to speak privately with him. "Doctor," I said when his calm voice came on the line, "I need to see you, alone. Not with Claire." He hesitated. "Is everything all right, Eleanor?" "No," I whispered. "They're trying to take everything from me." Silence on the other end. Then he said, "Come in tomorrow morning. We'll talk." Relief flooded me. At last, someone I could trust. When I walked into his office the next day, I carried my notebook under my arm. I sat across from him and told him everything, what I had seen, what I had overheard, what they were planning. At first he looked skeptical. After all, hadn't Claire already painted me as forgetful? Paranoid? But then I opened the notebook. Page after page of dates, quotes, details. Their whispers. Their lies. Their pressure. He read silently, his brow furrowing deeper with every line. Finally, he looked up. "Eleanor, you are not paranoid. You are documenting. That's very different." Tears blurred my eyes. Validation. At last. He leaned forward. "I'll help you. But we need more. If this goes to court, they'll push for guardianship. We need evidence that cannot be twisted." I nodded. "Tell me what to do." That night, as I sat in my room with the door locked, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Yes, they were tightening the trap. Yes, they thought they were winning. But now I had begun to build my own defense. And little did they know, every move they made was giving me more ammunition. They thought they were hunting me. But soon they would learn that I wasn't prey at all. I was the storm. And the storm was coming. For weeks I lived a double life. On the surface, I was the fragile old woman they wanted me to be, forgetful, compliant, pliable. But underneath, I was sharpening my weapons. Every whispered conversation, every manipulative smile, every forgetful moment they tried to plant in my mind, I turned it into evidence. And Dr. Adler was right beside me, helping me prepare. But no matter how much proof I gathered, I knew the storm was about to break. And when it did, there would be no going back. It started with a slammed door. Claire had gone with me to the pharmacy. I'd asked for my prescription records, something I'd done countless times before. But this time she froze. "Why do you need that, Mom?" she asked too quickly. "Oh, I just like to keep things in order," I said lightly. But her eyes narrowed. He knew. She knew I was no longer as passive as they wanted. That night after dinner, she and Daniel disappeared into their room. I crept down the hallway and pressed my ear to the door. Daniel's voice was sharp. "She's getting suspicious." She asked for her records, Claire whispered. I don't know why. Daniel cursed under his breath. We can't wait any longer. If she catches on before we file, it's over. My blood ran cold. We'll push her tomorrow, Daniel continued. Get her to sign. If she refuses, we tell the court she's resisting help. The more difficult she looks, the easier it is to prove incompetence. Claire hesitated. But what if? No buts, he snapped. She signs, or we make sure the judge believes she's unstable. Either way, we win. I stumbled back to my room, heart pounding. Tomorrow. They were making their move tomorrow. The next morning, the trap was sprung. Breakfast was laid out on the table. Pancakes, bacon, orange juice, all my favorites. Claire smiled sweetly. Daniel poured my coffee. Eleanor, he began smoothly, we've been thinking. It's time we finalize those papers. For your protection. Claire slid the documents toward me. The same thick stack I'd hidden before, only now freshly printed. I looked at them, then at her. She smiled, but her eyes were cold. Daniel leaned in. We have an appointment this afternoon with the lawyer. All we need is your signature. My hand trembled, not from fear but from rage. I picked up the pen. I let it hover just above the paper. Then I stopped. I don't sign anything without understanding it, I said firmly. Daniel's smile cracked. Eleanor, this isn't complicated. Then you won't mind if another lawyer reviews it, I said calmly. One of my choosing. The room went silent. Claire's fork clattered against her plate. Daniel's jaw tightened. That's unnecessary. Albert is very respected. Albert. So he did exist. The same name I'd heard whispered weeks ago. I set the pen down. If it's all above board, you won't mind a second opinion. Daniel's hand slammed against the table. Enough games, Eleanor. You're going to sign these papers today. The sound echoed through the kitchen, rattling my very bones. Claire flinched but said nothing. For the first time in years, I looked my son-in-law in the eye and saw the truth. This was not a man who cared for me. This was a man who saw me as an obstacle to bulldoze. I pushed the papers back toward him. No. The mask slipped completely. Daniel's voice rose, sharp and venomous. Do you want to end up in a nursing home? Because that's where you're headed if you don't cooperate. Claire finally spoke, her voice trembling. Mom, please. We just want what's best for you. I laughed bitterly. Best for me? Or best for your bank account? The silence that followed was thick as tar. Finally, Daniel sneered. You think anyone will believe you over us? You're forgetful. Confused. You spy on us, you write in that ridiculous notebook. A judge will see right through you. But I didn't flinch. Because I knew something they didn't. Dr. Adler had already run a full cognitive exam. He had already documented that my mind was sharp. And I had hidden copies of my notes in places they'd never think to look. Still, I let them think they had the upper hand. Maybe you're right, I said softly, standing from the table. Maybe I am just an old woman. Daniel smirked, thinking he'd won. But inside I was smiling too, because they had just revealed their true faces and I had seen every detail. That night they tightened their grip. They canceled my supplemental insurance, claiming money was too tight. They locked away the car keys, saying it was safer if I didn't drive. They even forgot to buy some of my groceries, leaving me dependent on whatever scraps they brought home. It was financial abuse, plain and simple. A slow strangulation of my independence. But every cruel move they made I recorded. On paper. In whispers I caught on my phone's recorder. In conversations with Dr. Adler, who promised me that when the time came he would stand by me in court. The tighter they tried to trap me, the more evidence I gathered. And still I played the part of the confused old woman. Because the best traps are the ones sprung at the perfect moment. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. Daniel barged into my room without knocking, the stack of papers in his hand. Sign them, he demanded. Now. I looked up from my journal calmly. No. He stepped closer, towering over me. If you don't, we'll file for guardianship. We'll tell the judge you're paranoid, unstable, a danger to yourself. Claire hovered in the doorway, tears in her eyes. But she didn't stop him. I closed my notebook slowly, stood and faced him. You may think you've already won, Daniel, I said evenly. But you've underestimated me. His laugh was cruel. What are you going to do? Call the police? You have no proof. I met his gaze. Oh, but I do. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. That night, I packed a small bag. Important documents, copies of my notes, Dr. Adler's letter confirming my mental clarity. And early the next morning, while Claire and Daniel still slept, I left the house. I wasn't running away. I was moving toward the battlefield. Because the time for pretending was over. The reckoning was coming. And when it arrived, it wouldn't be me on trial. It would be them. I walked out of my own house before sunrise, clutching a small leather bag to my chest. Inside it were my lifelines, Dr. Adler's medical report, copies of my notes, and every scrap of evidence I'd managed to gather. I wasn't running away, though. I was walking toward the fight of my life. Because Claire and Daniel thought they could corner me, twist the truth, and convince the court I was losing my mind. But I had lived long enough to know. Lies unravel. And when they do, they take the liars down with them. The courthouse in downtown Savannah stood tall and gray against the morning sky. I'd been there before years ago when Richard and I finalized our mortgage. But this time was different. This time I wasn't signing papers. I was defending my very right to exist as myself. Dr. Adler met me at the steps, his kind eyes steady. Beside him was a man in his 70s, Harold Green, a retired court clerk who had agreed to advise me. His voice was raspy, but his handshake was firm. "We'll make sure they don't railroad you, Mrs. Pierce," he said. For the first time in weeks, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt ready. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Claire sat at the petitioner's table, her head bowed like a grieving child. Daniel sat beside her, papers neatly stacked, his tie perfectly knotted. He looked like the very picture of a concerned son-in-law. When he saw me walk in with Dr. Adler, his smile faltered. The judge, a woman named Collins, entered. Her gavel cracked like thunder. Case number 472 in the matter of guardianship of Eleanor Pierce. Guardianship. The word tasted bitter. Daniel stood first. "Your Honor, we are here today because Eleanor, my wife's mother, has shown repeated signs of memory loss, confusion, and paranoia. We only want to protect her." Protect me. The audacity made my blood boil. Claire kept her eyes down, hands folded neatly. I wondered if she even realized how much she was betraying me, or if she had convinced herself this was mercy. Daniel continued, his voice steady. "She misplaces important documents, accuses us of stealing from her, and even spies on us. She's not safe handling her finances anymore." Every lie hung in the air like poison. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly, clutching the edge of the table for strength. My voice trembled at first, but I steadied it. "Your Honor," I began, "my son-in-law is right about one thing. I am 68 years old. I forget where I put my glasses sometimes. I misplace my keys. But that does not make me incompetent. And it certainly does not make me paranoid." I opened my bag and placed my notebook on the table. This is my record. For months, I have documented every conversation, every attempt to undermine me. Not because I'm paranoid, but because I knew this day would come. Daniel shifted in his chair, his jaw tightening. I pulled out Dr. Adler's letter. "And this," I said, handing it to the bailiff, "is a medical report from my physician who has treated me for more than a decade. It states in no uncertain terms that my mind is sharp and my memory intact." Judge Collins read it silently. Her brow lifted slightly. Dr. Adler stood, his voice firm. "Your Honor, I administered a full cognitive exam. Mrs. Pierce passed every test with ease. There is no sign of dementia, paranoia, or cognitive decline. The claims being made here are unfounded." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Daniel's face flushed red. But I wasn't done. "Your Honor," I continued, my voice rising, "this guardianship is not about my health. It is about greed. I caught them rifling through my private papers. I overheard them discussing how to sell my home and use the money for themselves. They spoke of putting me in a nursing facility against my will." Gasps filled the room. Claire's head snapped up, her eyes wide, pleading. But Daniel leaned forward, his mask slipping. "That's a lie," he spat. I opened my notebook to a page I had bookmarked. My hands no longer trembled. On June 14th at 8:45 p.m. Daniel said, and I quote, "Once the guardianship is in place, we can refinance. Maybe even sell this old house. Start fresh somewhere better." Those were his words. I wrote them down the moment I heard them. I looked directly at Daniel. "You called me a burden. An obstacle. Do you deny it? His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Judge Collins' gaze hardened. Then Claire spoke. Her voice cracked. Mom, please. We were only trying to help. I turned to her, and for a moment I saw the little girl she used to be. But the memory was drowned by the reality in front of me. Help, I whispered. By stealing my home? By stripping me of my dignity? By treating me like I'm already dead? Her tears spilled, but I felt no comfort. Some betrayals are too deep for tears to wash clean. Judge Collins leaned forward. I have heard enough. The gavel came down hard. This petition for guardianship is denied. Furthermore, I find sufficient cause to refer this matter to the district attorney for potential investigation into elder financial abuse. The words hit the air like lightning. Daniel shot to his feet. This is outrageous. She's manipulating you. Sit down, Mr. Hale, the judge snapped. You've done enough talking. Claire wept silently, her head in her hands. Me. I stood tall. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. I had survived the storm. As we left the courthouse, Dr. Adler touched my arm. You were brilliant, Eleanor. Brave. I shook my head. No. I was just a mother who refused to be erased. Because that's what this was about, more than money or property. It was about being seen. Being heard. Being allowed to live on my own terms, even at 68. The reckoning had come. And I had not been destroyed. The courthouse doors closed behind me, and for the first time in months, I breathed air that felt like mine. Not Claire's. Not Daniel's. Mine. The gavel had come down, and with it their scheme had shattered. The guardianship was denied. Their mask of concern had slipped away in front of everyone, and the judge had referred their actions for investigation. But the truth is, victory doesn't feel like fireworks. Feels like exhaustion. Like the weight of months finally sliding off your back, leaving your shoulders sore but free. That evening I sat alone in my living room. My home. The same room where Richard's portrait hangs above the mantel, where Claire once opened Christmas presents with squeals of joy, where I had wept through his funeral reception. It was quiet. Too quiet. I thought I would feel triumphant, but instead I felt hollow. Because yes, I had won. I had kept my house. I had defended my mind. I had survived. But I had also lost something no court could restore. I had lost my daughter. The weeks that followed were strange. Daniel was furious, of course. The district attorney opened an inquiry into elder financial abuse, and he hired a lawyer of his own. He swore I was fabricating everything, twisting his words, making him out to be a monster. But the evidence, the notes, Dr. Adler's testimony, even Harold's observations, was too strong. Claire was different. She sent me letters. Apologies written in shaky handwriting. Mom, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. Daniel pressured me. I thought it was the only way. Please forgive me. I read each letter carefully. My heart ached. Because I wanted to forgive her. I wanted to reach back through time to that little girl with the scraped knees and the freckled cheeks and hold her tight. But forgiveness doesn't erase betrayal. And trust, once broken, is not so easily rebuilt. So I folded the letters and placed them in a drawer. Not to throw away, but not to answer either. Not yet. Daniel's arrogance cost him more than he realized. The investigation uncovered not only his attempts at guardianship fraud, but also questionable dealings in his own business. By the time it was over, he was facing charges far heavier than he ever expected. Claire took a plea deal. She testified against him in exchange for leniency. She avoided prison, but the price was steep. A permanent restraining order barring her from contacting me without my consent. The day I signed that order, my hand shook. Not because I doubted it, but because I never imagined life would bring me here, drawing a line of law between myself and the child I had raised. Me. I rebuilt. Slowly, carefully, I filled my days with something other than fear. I joined a book club at the library downtown. I baked pies for the church social. I sat on the porch in the evenings, sipping tea, listening to cicadas sing in the humid Georgia twilight. Neighbors who once waved politely began stopping by more often. One woman, Margaret, started bringing me tomatoes from her garden. Another, Thomas, fixed the loose boards on my back steps without me even asking. Piece by piece, I found a new kind of family. Not one bound by blood, but by kindness, by respect, by genuine care. And for the first time I realized something. Blood does not guarantee love. Love is proven in actions, in trust, in sacrifice. Sometimes, late at night, I still walk past the study and remember that night. The sliver of light under the door, the sound of papers rustling, Daniel's voice saying, "Now it's our turn." And it still hurts. But then I remember something else. I remember my own voice in that courtroom, steady and clear. I am not incompetent. I am not paranoid. I am a woman defending her life. And I realize I did not just save my house. I saved myself. It's been a year now. Claire lives 3 states away. I hear she's working at a bookstore trying to start over. Fail. Well, Daniel is where greed always leads in the end. Stripped of the respect he once demanded, paying the price for his choices. Me. I'm still here. In this house built with Richard's hands, surrounded by memories that are mine to keep. Some people ask me if I regret fighting so hard. If maybe I should have let it go, signed the papers, avoided the battle. But I tell them this. The moment you stop fighting for yourself is the moment you stop living. And I intend to live every day I have left on my own terms. So if you're listening to me right now, let me leave you with this. Protect what is yours, your home, your dignity, your freedom. Even if it means standing against the people you love most. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from your own blood. And when it does, you must be strong enough to say, "No. Not me. Not today." Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. You can also send a super thanks. It helps me keep bringing you more stories like this. Because family isn't always who shares your blood. Sometimes, family is who stands beside you when the storm comes. Thank you for listening. Until next time, with love and with strength.